Hey guys, how's it going? I'm the Duke of Italy, your favorite lo-fi music YouTuber, and welcome to the thrilling conclusion of Genre January. However late this is getting uploaded. Genre Jebuary was a thing with the first upload. It's been Genre Jarch. Genre April. That's what we're dealing with, I guess. But of course, just like last year, we're doing a chart to complete it. And unlike Crunkcore, where I had to make that chart and I dealt with all the pain any man could ever suffer through their ears through listening to 9 different Crunkcore albums and assembling them. Instead, one, I enjoy Dng Gang. I've come to that pretty firm conclusion. And 2, this chart was made for me, and this is actually how to get into Dng Gang and the Sad Boys sound, and specifically into Blade. It says Blade / Dng Gang. Now, I will say this chart is not that new, so it is missing Crest and as well as Pixie. Pixie being one of the more important ones, and of course the Fool. I've discussed the Fool on my Blade review, but I could mention Pixie a bit right now. So Pixie is Echo 2K's second official release. I'm discussing this before E. We'll get to E later because it has an actual spot on this chart, and this is a very eclectic listen here. It's not that long. It's hovering around 10 minutes, but it's got a lot of hyper pop stuff, and it's got a lot of pop punk stuff. And I know you're all probably groaning at that because the recent pop punk resurgence has been its consequences have been a disaster for the human race. Basically, everything about it has been like completely like with the culture. None of it's counterculture, and it's all kind of disgusting, to be honest. And knowing Echo 2K's sort of like interesting status as like an enigmatic figure, I say, you know what, if you want a style to do, go for it. Like Lady Gaga did like dance pop in like the 2000s, or just like electro pop, I guess. And you know, she sounded unique, she sounded interesting, borderline avant-garde at points, and that was just my take because I mean, kind of her appearance was doing a lot of that. And so what Pixie, I'm gonna say it's great, straight up. Little bit fillery at a couple points. There's like some intermission bits that you really don't need, but everything on this EP is great. I think it's tough to find a shorter amount of tracks with as much quality. There's also like a serious dosage of electronics here, and it all sounds really beautiful. Every track on here is great as well, and also Echo 2K busts his stuff out live, so like I honestly love it. So how this chart starts is it says to start with early Young Lean work. It says to start with Lavender, Kyoto, and Unknown Death. Now, I suggest everyone try to listen to pretty much all of Young Lean's work. I think it's all pretty good. But yeah, that is a pretty decent place to start, I guess, to get into Blade. I have heard the idea that this chart is flawed because you can just get into Blade with his first like debut full-length album. I guess we'll get into that in a sec. But I think this is an interesting jump off point. Young Lean, the thing is, like, if you don't like Young Lean from the get-go, then you probably might not like Blade. He's a little different from Blade, but he does have some crossover points. I'm not going to say that this part of the chart is completely invalidated. I think Blade is kind of an interesting artist, and not a lot of people are going to get with him. I've played Young Lean for people, not early Young Lean, but relatively accessible Young Lean, and not everyone gets it. So, I mean, Young Lean is an interesting starting point, but like it's not exactly bulletproof necessarily. But it does place an emphasis on getting into the Sad Boys sound, which is adjacent to Dng Gang. I mean, Young Sherman's on both teams, so that's a connecting point, I guess. But there's really not that much there that like I'm like super enthusiastic about. I mean, I get it though. And then this chart does something that I guess kind of works. It actually says a bunch of singles. It suggests a bunch of singles next, a bunch of Blade and Young Lean collaboration singles. That's fine, I guess. I mean, you hear Blade. Here's the thing with Blade that I suggest. To start with Dng Gang, I recommend you start with Legendary Member by Tyboy Digital. And if you don't like that, like first of all, that's the easiest one to like right off the bat. And then from there, you can get into the other stuff because it's all kind of an easy point to jump in. Not that that's super hard to get into. Like, it doesn't indicate that you'll get into their sound, but I think it's actually more accessible than any of Young Lean's work. Anyways, after these singles of like Red Velvet, Hennessy, and Sailor Moon, which not all of those are perfect and accessible in their own right, we get into Ever Since by Blade. Ever Since by Blade is, in my opinion, his best album. Is it his most accessible? Potentially. I think it's like about just as avant-garde as 333. It's the level of quality needed, but not exactly like a different emotion from 333. So I guess this is a pretty fine spot to enter with Blade. I think it's a really good one. Echo 2K's features on this aren't really his like androgynous vocals too much yet, so I think it's a lot more accessible than like his other stuff. There are actually plenty of like Blade singles that I think are totally fine for here. I mean, like Hocus Pocus is a track with Young Lean that isn't on this chart. I think that's a one that bridges over a little bit better than the ones explained here. And I think straight up, you can just say, listen to the track, Be Nice to Me. And if you can't get with the goofy style at all, then just stop with the chart. Just don't progress any further. But here we got Ever Since. Ever Since is a pretty decent place to start with Blade if you want to immediately jump into a full length. I think another good way to start actually with the Dng Gang sound, straight up, go with some Young Lean, then hit it with Trash Island. I think Trash Island is also a great introduction. So if I was making this chart, I would probably suggest the most accessible stuff, probably like Lavender. You want to probably have like Poison Ivy, probably those two, plus Legendary Member. And then if you're used to the features and you're used to all that, go straight into Trash Island. Trash Island is short, and we're going to get into that. But I think that's a better way of accessing all the later stuff there. If you do just that, then you could straight up do the rest of it in any way you want. But here we had Ever Since, another fine entry point, a little depressing. If you don't want to get into the depressing stuff, that's another thing, but it does kind of explain what it does with that. And then it says here that the instruments are good, but you can't get into the vocals. And it has 4 different releases here. Technically, a couple of them aren't really releases, but I'm going to talk about that. So up first is the bootleg White Armor release, Feelings Eternal. So right off the bat, we get a pretty eclectic mix of material here. It's not exactly the most engaging, but everything here is super atmospheric and deep. A little less percussive, not as much like beat style material here as you would probably expect White Armor to be known for, but it's a good sort of like way to like hear his sound a little bit. I am not the most avid White Armor listener. That is the only, like, the producers of Dng Gang, I didn't really access all their stuff to really tell you what everything's about. Because, I mean, the meat and potatoes of Dng Gang is the vocalists, Blade, Echo 2K, and Tyboy Digital. So, I mean, White Armor's sound is really iconic, but it's not exactly something that you need to cover extensively. It doesn't really get you anywhere further. This part of the chart kind of puts you in a box, and it's not like go forth. It's kind of like, here you go. Here's 4 albums, and then you get nothing else. The track I Know is one of my favorite sort of pieces on this whole record here. And the ending of the Control 36 mix, which is like this really long track, also sounds pretty great. Some of these tracks are straight up like 2 steps away from Dungeon Synth. Maybe White Armor can explore Dungeon Synth a little bit. I mean, you've heard Hocus Pocus, you've heard a couple of the Blade tracks. I think it's something that could be done. But every track here is like super melancholic and really immersive. It might not be the most engaging project ever, but I think this is a great release. I think the way this chart is done is it offshoots in different styles after you listen to Ever Since, which is fine, but I just think that if you do something a little more linear, maybe more era defined, maybe more get to an artist, I personally would leave this towards like the end of your listening experience. It's more like, do you really want more? Then listen to a bootleg. I mean, I'm not really one to listen to many bootlegs. I think that's not really something worth my time that often. I'm sure White Armor has like singles in his own compilations that are better, and this is a bootleg compilation. But it's still good. It's great material. It's a great listen. I recommend anyone listen to it if you like Dng Gang. I would rather be supporting the actual artists, even if it is just a Spotify listen. And up next is White Armor's Judgment Day Megamix. This is one of the earliest Dng Gang releases. I want to say like early, like 3. Like I think Echo 2K made like his beat tape around this time. I don't even think GTBSG compilation came out yet. But this whole thing sounds dead and icy. A lot of these beats sound like cold and unreachable and really just necrotic. Things like hauntingly chilly. This might be the most like archetypal Drainer sound, even though it's certainly more trance built. Basically, this thing is a trip. It's really interesting overall, and it's another piece of White Armor stuff that I find fun to listen to, I guess. I would give this another grade. White Armor's material has never really let me down. I think it's totally solid. And up next, we get the Young Good, Young Sherman mix. This is a bootleg that's on YouTube. In my opinion, White Armor is the best of the 3 sort of like sad boy affiliating producers. But that doesn't mean Young Good and Young Sherman don't make good stuff. I just think that this tape here is a little lo-fi beats to study to, kind of music-y, not the most engaging piece of music around. Not that it's bad, just not all of it's that good. It's also pretty long. I do like the track The Come Down. It's got some pretty solid textures. Some of these beats feel rather Warlord-esque, like they belong on the album Warlord. In my opinion, Young Good here kind of smokes out Young Sherman. These are not Young Sherman's best beats, I bet. And if they were, that means Young Good's a better producer. The track I'm Dead not only is super immersive, but very depressing. And of course, that's a Young Good track. This release as a whole, I think it's good. But as well as the other ones here, pretty inessential. And then the last part of this instrumental section is Space Ghost Perp, Dark Angels instrumentals. DQing this one, not from necessarily Swedish cloud rap genre January, but from the chart. I think that it's inessential. It's the most inessential part of this chart, if not the second most. And 2, it's just it's not that great, honestly. It doesn't really fit. Like everything here feels like it's a beat to rap to, but it feels so incomplete in that regard. And even then, it's just, I think if someone was rapping over it, it wouldn't be a very good beat to begin with. I know Space Ghost Perp has like one song with Lean, and that's it. So that's it makes me wonder why he's on this chart. It doesn't really seem like something that matters. I think this is another one of those tapes that's like good lo-fi hip-hop beats to study to. It's really just background noise. I don't think it's that engaging. I'm going to give it an okay because nothing about it was like bad. I think these beats were all like good enough. Just music-y. Also not as good as the Young Good, Young Sherman mix. And also just unnecessary. And then Ever Since does the branch off into the 3 sections based on different albums. The first one, it says, I like the hazy songs, and then it goes to Glue by Blade. Here's the thing about Glue by Blade. I've given my opinions on it. I don't think it's great, but it is hazy. But here's the thing. If you want something hazy, cover Tiger by Tyboy Digital, which we'll get into. But Glue is, I've given my thoughts on it, so you can go watch my Blade discography review. It is an okay release here, but honestly, everything that's it is leading to is better. And the first thing it discusses is the GTBSG compilation. This is the Gravity Boys Shield Gang compilation, the first Drain Gang full-length album. And even though it says compilation, it sounds like an album. Like, you could genuinely pass this off as a full-length release, and I'd say it works. And the thing is, it's shockingly good. Really, really good. I'm honestly very surprised at how good it is, because it's like the first release from, I want to say, each of the vocalists, and they all really bring their A game. They rarely show much flaws, and it's really impressive like that. Now, this is just a compilation, so it's not necessarily they're all collabing together on each track. In fact, some of these tracks are just one member at a time, but everything here is just really solid. First of all, Tyboy starting this whole thing with the track Bank Account is a crazy opener. He's probably like the most hype of the Drain Gang members, so of course you're going to put him on the opener. And it's not entirely perfect, I'd say, but it's pretty close. And for Drain Gang, they don't get much better. It is hazy too. This gets a great. First time I listened to it, which was a long time ago, I listened to like a little bit of it and I thought it was kind of strange. But if you can get into the hazy sound, absolutely a great point to listen to. And the next release to talk about is Tyboy Digital's Tiger, not his single Tiger. Don't listen to that. Not only is it like weaker than any song on this album here, but I don't actually want to explain why else not to listen to it. If you want to listen to it, figure it out for yourself. But we're talking about his full length here, Tiger, which is a awesome album. So basically, if you take Glue and you take Red Light and combine those two albums and give it more energy than both of those, you get Tiger, which I think Red Light's biggest flaw is like a couple of the tracks lack some energy, and here is the energy that you need. So of course Thai Boy knocks this out of the park, and a lot of these songs are bookended by these really thick instrumentals that sort of extend the song for maybe like 30 seconds total, which is so awesome. And I think it's a really good idea to shine the light on the producer a bit more in your track and really just have you soak it in. The track GTB Let's Go is very hazy. It borderlines on ambient at a few points, and everything slows down after this track too. This is an underrated release, and for the sparseness of some of the lyrics sometimes, whether or not it's hooky or he's just not saying much in a certain amount of time, it's surprisingly emotional too. This gets a great. It's a really underrated project, and I think Thai Boy Digital is the most underrated member of Dng by far, because in terms of releases, he just might be the best, to be honest. And the reason I say that is just in terms of like, if you take the average level of quality and you compound it with enough releases, then that kind of determines your quality. Blade, I guess in this would have technically the worst discography, but he also has the most great albums, so that's one thing. But Echo 2K has one album, one EP, and a bunch of bootlegs. And I mean, if you listen to all the bootlegs, that's your deal. But most people are here to listen to E, and half those people are here to listen to Pixie, and 10% of those are here to listen to the bootlegs. So, but Thai Boy, 2 banger albums. And the last release in this little section here is Black Cray. Crack Clouds Over Art's Kitchen. Yeah, I'm gonna DQ this. This is it's not really drinking. I'm pretty sure Black Cray talks about Blade on Twitter, but that's really like it. Like, I don't see a whole lot of reason for this to be here. On top of that, it's kind of boring. So this album here is less than amateur, and it's novel. So if you listen to this, I'm gonna say this: if you listen to the entire chart and you need another listen, then listen to this. But if it doesn't all compel you to do that, then just don't worry about it. I give this an okay, because it's okay. And the last one of these hazy releases is Echo 2K with Beauty Sleep. This is a bootleg. Now, this is essential to the Dng canon because it's got a lot of really great tracks, and it's honestly a pretty unique cloud rap experience. And on top of this, we get a lot of Echo 2K beats that he released in the past that are really ambient and really interesting. As a compilation record, this thing is like super diverse, a lot of variety, a lot of interesting feelings being explored here. It's very hazy, but it feels also consistent at the same time. And I think the ambient tracks are a bit much, but on paper they're strong. And I think if you dropped like one of them, then this would be a strong release overall. But right now I think this is good. If you want more Echo 2K like desperately after his other 2 releases, totally get into Beauty Sleep. It's got Hold Me Down Like Gravity. Some people say that song is amazing. I think it's a good song. I don't think it's like the best Echo 2K song, but if you want some more, then listen to that. And if you prefer the clearer rap songs, this is branching again from Ever Since, it says to listen to Working on Dying by Blade. Well, I enjoy that record somewhat, but I don't think that's necessarily the direction you need to take. I would say go into probably Legendary Member by Thai Boy. I've mentioned that before, and I'll mention it again. I think it needs some more light reflected on it. And Working on Dying is also like, as someone who isn't a typical Dng fan who doesn't love the same albums as everyone else does, I would put this myself here, but no other Dng fan would put Working on Dying here. A lot of people think that's one of his weakest releases, probably his weakest like full length, and it's one that's just kind of not breaking a lot of barriers. I mean, I would go into maybe like R.I.P. Blade. I think that's a totally fine one to go into, and I just this is just kind of an oddball choice. I think it's about time you mention another Dng member, at least this high up in the chart. And this branches down into Ice Dancer and Red Light, as well as 2 other albums that I'm going to talk about in a sec. I've given my opinions on Ice Dance and Red Light. I think they're Blade's weakest releases overall. They both have an identity to both of them, but if you remade this today, obviously you'd put in the Fool here. In my opinion, I think it's better than both those releases. But I mean, I see what it's saying here. It's totally fine because those are clearer Blade records to transition into. In my opinion, I would put the alternative sort of OG mix of Red Light here, but that's just my only opinion that is my own, I guess. And then this references Tyboy Digital's Legendary Member, which we have finally reached. So this album, first time listening to it, you'll find seems a bit generic, but it's kind of like an outsider trap thing because, I mean, Tyboy Digital is not American, so he doesn't make trap like Americans do. He does add some different flow changes that I don't hear that often, but the style is incredibly hooky. I love the track Kiss Me Through the Scope. I think it's a really good blend of textures, and I think it's one of the most fun tracks overall. The last 2 tracks on this album are where it gets the most interesting and the most experimental. I think it's just straight Kino. I think there's a bit of a hump in the track list, and once it gets over it, it's very strong, but the first couple of tracks do kind of weigh it down just a little bit. So overall, I'm going to give this album a grade. It probably will reward you after a couple listens, but I think it's totally worth exploring, and it's totally worth adding to the Dng Gang canon, and it's totally worth busting out a lot of these live. And then the last release in this section is the Blade and Tyboy collab, AVP. In my opinion, this is Tyboy's worst release by a mile. He doesn't seem to do that much, and Blade barely shows up either. His work here is just not up to snuff. Not really a lot of hooks, not really that many engaging beats, although the beats are pretty good. If you want to get into this album, I recommend the track Area 51. I think it's the closest track to great on here, but if you like it, then maybe you'll find something on this album that I don't. But this album is okay. I think when you're done with all of the Dng Gang releases, it's definitely one to cover. It's definitely one you should cover after all of them. It's not bad, but it's also not that good either. And before I get into the next section, I'm going to quickly mention the Dng Album. This is the technical, official, first full-length album from Dng Gang, and it's not on this chart, and I understand why. The first few tracks are great on it, but the rest of it is so fillery, it's nuts. It's literally like they had like 4 singles in mind that they just loved, and they're like, let's put it in an album. And then they recorded a bunch of stuff that no one could care any less about, and they put it on as well. I think for the Dng record here, the first half of the album is really good. It's really good. This is an excellent EP. Don't listen to the rest. Here's how I recommend you do it. Listen to the first half, listen to the next track of the second half. If you don't like it, go ahead and stop it. You have the Duke of Italy permission to stop listening to an album in the middle of it. I don't do that pretty much ever. So you have my permission for this one time. Because, Dng Gang's a different beast entirely. I think this is an okay release, specifically because half of it's great. And then we get to this interesting part of this chart here. It says, quote, "This album is far too sad, and I don't even like rap," coming from Eversense. Yes, it's sad. Don't know why it was the first one to be put into, even though it's great. Maybe you're like, I'm sad, let me get into the Dng Gang sound, and that's what attracts you to it, but we're trying to get people into the sound here. We're trying to drag all these random people into it. So, tough to tell you the perfect place to enter. Young Lean, I guess, is a good spot. Eversense, if you want a great album to get into the sound, yeah, it's a great one. But it might filter you a little bit in the sadness factor. I do like that it explains that it's sad, and then you might not like that. But we've had plenty of releases on here that aren't sad. Ice Dancer is not sad. So it says it's too sad, and that the listener doesn't like rap. Don't know how you got through Young Lean, but okay. And then you reach E by Echo 2K. Glad we finally reached it. This is the only full length from Echo 2K, and it is a bunch of bangers. It's hazy, it's hooky, its aesthetic is 100% unique to itself and itself alone. It is a very repetitive record, at least on each individual song. AAA Powerline really relies on the same hook over and over, bar like a verse in here, but it is so thoroughly hypnotic and engaging that you can totally forgive it. Not that it's the best track on here. Peroxide and Calcium are really impressive, as well as the track Time, which is the only real banger on the track list here. I think the track Security sounds like Imogen Heap, or Imogen Heap. I don't know how you pronounce her name, but it is one of the most unique pop songs I've heard in a really long time. E is great, essential to the Dng Gang canon. It's almost, as I have seen Echo 2K live, I will say it feels more like a proof of concept for what is the masterful performance that Echo 2K will give live, because I mean nothing compares to his live performances really. But the album itself is great. And one thing I'm going to mention before I guess conclude this chart is Crest by Blade and Echo 2K. Here's my little review of it right now. It is the most spiritual Blade and Echo 2K record. If you like girls just want to have fun, it's certainly more on the hyperpop route. I think adding to this chart the Mecha Talk release with Blade and this would have a whole different section entirely. It's like as abstract as maybe not quite as abstract as Exeter, but it still is pretty abstract, and it's certainly weirder sounding. It's definitely kind of a branch off thing. But if you want something that's spiritual and really poppy, yet really good hooks, I think Crest is a release for you. I think The Flag is Raised and Chaos Follows are both like, they're both top 20 Blade tracks, maybe even top 15, maybe even top 10. But I do think that the rest of this album is not exactly as great as I wanted it to be. But I think I'm going to give this a good. I think it's a good album. I don't think it's great. And then also on this section of the chart here, you have Exeter by Blade, as well as 333 by Blade. Of course, this is all sort of branched off from E, but I love Exeter and I love 333. In my opinion, 333 is easier to get into than Exeter, but Exeter is clearly something that goes into 333. It's sort of like a middle period of Blade where he learns to find himself. Not that Exeter following 333 doesn't work as a listening experience, because I heard 333 a long time before Exeter. Both are great. I think they're some of Blade's strongest works, and I really I'm happy for anyone who gets to listen to either of them. And then of course we get SOS by Thai Boy. This is his EP. This is a clean yet dense record, and in 4 tracks it's pretty clear what is here for you. The track Nothing to Fear is not very good. It's the second track and it's the longest track on the record. It borders like 5 minutes, and the rest of the tracks I think combined are 7, maybe a little bit under. I think the track Magic is super interesting though. This is a good release here. I've got no real problem with it, but ultimately not his best work, and I think it's something to appreciate though. And I covered that, even though I should have covered this one technically a second earlier, but we get Drain Gang's Trash Island to finish this whole thing off. The only real Dng album. D&G doesn't count because it's not very good. It's really finally showing off that Dng Gang lifts each other up and they're not complete without the others. And I truly mean that. Blade's work is some of his best on here. Echo 2K has a lot of variety in his voice, where he'll do the really high-pitched vocals and he'll do more lower-pitched vocals. That is stuff that I would probably do. I'm a baritone, and it's surprising how low Echo 2K reaches. And Thai Boy's bars are dope here too. I mean, he says like Thai Boy effing goon several times, and if that doesn't give you a needed jolt of energy in this album, it's because the album didn't need it in the first place. It's just additional stuff. It wins more than it has to. Of course, this isn't the most groundbreaking album in the world, but the beats are awesome, the hooks are killer, every vocal performance is fantastic. The track Void is really a nice callback to the Eversense sound, and since Blade hasn't referenced Eversense in a few years to any degree that's really like cringe-inducing that he's abusing it for too long, but I think it's an excellent callback on the sound. And of course, how can I talk about this without Western Union? 2 minutes flat in nothing but killer use of its time. It's 2 minutes of pure, unbridled fire. Just look no further than the hook. The song starts off with beat, one shot, click, 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 reload, reload, reload. Trash Island is great. It's really great. And if you don't listen to it, I pity you greatly. Also, the Young Lean feature is pretty nice too. So that is technically the whole chart. I did want to mention that I don't know why Black Cray and Space Ghost Perp were here. I think someone who should be included instead, even though I've not heard all his stuff, is Cartier God. Cartier God actually showed up to the Dng Gang show I was at. He did a couple songs, and he was there when they were doing Western Union. He was just chilling in the back. I think his album should have been represented. Of course, Cardi Your God has like so many albums, it's ridiculous, but I'm sure someone out there has like found a couple worth listening to. And I think that's a good thing to be like, want more Dng Gang sound? Listen to them. But I have a surprise entrant to talk about. And it's something that if I made this chart myself, I might say, listen to this album. If you can't get with it, skip the rest of the chart because it's more abstract than everything. Or better yet, I would probably say pair up a legendary member at the top with some Young Lean, maybe with that Trash Island, and then you like point down, be like weirder, and then you go into the weirder releases. You know, you got your E, your 333, your Exeter. Maybe like Ice Dancer and Red Light you do above the section, but you got all this weird stuff down here. But I would like a flow chart of weirdness, and I think that's totally a fine thing to do. And maybe do little branch off points like, do you really like this section? Listen to Glue. Listen to, I don't know, Working on Dying. And then where you got your Pixie, your Exeter, all that good stuff, I think you should include a little something from the Busta himself, Viper, Ready and Willing. Not to disappoint you guys, but this is one of the best albums of all time. Straight up. It is. I know. Like, you'll cowards don't even smoke crack. Like, I know. Believe me, I know the memes. I knew going into this would sound ridiculous. And Viper's got ridiculous stuff now. Like, obviously, if you don't know the history of Viper, I recommend you dive into it a little bit. You could look at all his album covers, and they look ridiculous in the first place. But you can tell he does cloud rap style stuff. Pretty much all of his stuff past, like, 2004 or 5. And a lot of it is, like, fine, I guess. Most of it's, like, terrible. Most of his albums are, like, repackaged songs with a new song, and, like, none of them are even good. Viper's discography is only like 5 albums long, and it ended a long time ago. Ready and Willing is potentially the first official like abstract cloud rap album. I think Cloud Dead deserves a mention too. Another great album, but these two can be like, give me something so bizarrely weirder. And I have a chart I'm going to cover at some point, which is the shoegaze chart, which it ends up reaching Pulse Demon by Merzbow. I think it's kind of a meme there, but it reaches really noisy sounding shoegaze, and it says noisier, and it says listen to pure noise. Merzbow. I think you could totally do that with this chart and mention Viper and mention Cloudhead and all of them. And I totally recommend that you guys listen to Ready and Willing by the man himself, Viper. What a conclusion to Genre January. I enjoyed this year, and unlike last year where it made me want to stop listening to music, it actually had the opposite effect. I'm rather inspired by Dng Gang, actually, and I think they're not even done. I love Dng Gang. I really do. I love that one Viper album. I love Cloud Dead. Maybe I'll cover some more cloud rap in the future. One thing I will say, Stardust by Young Lean, the review of that will be out when the album drops, because I gotta talk about it. I just gotta. But I hope you guys out there enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed Genre January if you followed along. I'd appreciate a like and subscribe. Comments, questions, and concerns, go ahead, comment down below. Anything else, I'd love to hear you guys' input. Social media in the description. Go ahead and hit me up there. Join the Discord page, join my Instagram, Twitter, etc. But that's about it. Hope you guys are doing well. Have a good day. Bye.